HHS Secretary RFK Jr. has fired the entire CDC Vaccine Advisory Board. This, of course, follows his decision to remove the COVID shots from the children's vaccine schedule, along with pregnant women. So you'll be hard-pressed to find anyone that is more passionate about this issue than BlazeTV host Steve Deace, who is kind enough to join us in studio now. Steve, now, we look at the vaccine issue, and there are so many steps that still need to be taken. But what does this one signal to you?
This is the first true consequences that I think we have seen. We've seen corrections. And, it's funny because, of the many laudable attributes people on our side come up with for Donald Trump, humility is not necessarily high on the list. Fair? Okay. And yet, the reality is the amount of self-awareness that, you're never going to get an "I have sinned against you" from Donald Trump level of apology. That's just not who he is. Okay. But you look at the fact that almost every major healthcare policy position in his administration went to some form of COVID scamdemic skeptic. That cannot be a coincidence. And what you saw with RFK Jr. here, to me, I told our audience the nomination of RFK Jr. As Secretary of HHS, guys, might be the closest we're ever going to get in America to a tribunal on what happened during that period of time. And now this is the closest thing to real consequences, people losing their jobs, that we have seen. In fact, I was kind of stunned when I heard this yesterday. We're so conditioned to nobody being held accountable for anything, no reckoning for anything, no recompense for any lie, and you can just carry on as you were. So I'm excited to actually see consequences, and I kind of think that this is kind of setting the bar, guys, for some other department heads that are running some places that maybe a lot of people need to be fired, like looking at you, Pam Bondi, at the DOJ, for example.
Well, this is exciting stuff, and your column will be out at theblaze.com on this tomorrow, and everyone should go read that. But give us a little bit more color on this as to who's being fired and why, who these people are.
Well, this panel has existed in various forms for a few decades, and they have never once found that a single vaccine was unsafe. Not one. Now, just to put this in some context, I think everybody would understand, Matt. Moderna, as a company, for over a decade, tried to bring a singular product to market. Was never able to do it one time until the COVID vaccine. So somehow they were unable to harness this mRNA technology for over a decade to successfully bring not even a single product to market one time. And yet, under the gun, the pressure of a once-in-a-century pandemic, they pulled it off. They went to the craps table, put it all on black, and it came through. And everything is safe and effective. There's never any consequences for anything. No one's ever held accountable for anything. Everybody's, of course, got liability shields at the exact same time. So we're talking about a panel that at least 25 years did not find one single shot unsafe, including the COVID vaccines. So that just kind of gives you an idea of who this panel is. And the names are kind of irrelevant at this point. It's a hydra, basically. You just have to keep cutting off heads. New ones keep forming. This is what happens when our institutions get captured by the spirit of the age and essentially no longer. It's funny. I got into this business almost 20 years ago, and we were very concerned about overregulation. And now, Matt, we're sitting here saying, where is the regulation? Okay? Because we didn't say there shouldn't be any regulation at all right? But that's essentially what we have. If you're an entrepreneur, lots of regulation for you. If you're an entrepreneur, you can't get enough of regulation. They will fetishize it. But if you are an entity that can write a massive check making you too big to fail, no regulation for you.
So let me read this. Children's Health Defense, Mary Hotland from that organization provided us with a quote today. It's being an article on theblaze.com. She said, "It's unbelievable that ACIP members were allowed to participate in deliberations regarding a product in which they might have a financial stake. No wonder the committee consistently approved every vaccine for use," and goes on to basically reiterate what you're saying here. And this is something that I think most Americans do understand about Big Pharma. Mm-hmm. It seems to me like that's the winning, wedge. It's actually it's a stone that falls on most of the electorate. But it really is wild to me how we haven't highlighted enough, and we do need to do more of this, at the website, how much money these people make, how shameless it is. It just seems like it's in broad daylight.
Let me just give one data point that I think everybody would understand. So CDC, everybody complains about VAERS, and rightfully so. That's the Vaccine Adverse Event Reporting System. It was part of the trade-off for the 86 liability shield. It's it's supposed to be a self-reporting system, but it's incredibly clumsy. It times out. A lot of times it requires medical professionals to help you fill something out. There was a Harvard study done about a decade or so ago that found that by a factor of 10, given how laborious the system is, they think that adverse events are underreported, right? And so the CDC set up its own system for the COVID vaccine because of how difficult the VAERS system is. And they called it vSafe. And they had over 10 million people peer-to-peer on an app that they were interacting with individually. So they knew in real time, and 10 million is a massive sample of people, they knew in real time what was happening. What they found was almost 8% of people reported a serious adverse event. Now, serious adverse event could mean anything from I had to go to urgent care to my heart rate kept me up all night and then it went away. Could mean death. There's a wide range of things. It basically means something that was more serious than anything you felt in the first 15 minutes after you took this shot. All right, 8% of people had a serious adverse event. Well, at the height of COVID, Matt, before we even stratify for age or demography, the hospitalization rate in America for COVID was 2%. That means there was about a 300% higher likelihood that you were going to get an adverse event from the COVID shot than you were ever going to have to be hospitalized for COVID. Again, before we stratify for age, comorbidity, or anything. On top of that, that also means there was about the IFR, except for the most elderly of people during COVID, the infection fatality rate ended up being about 0.01. Which also means now there was a 1,600% higher likelihood that you were going to get a serious adverse event from the COVID vaccine than you were going to die from COVID unless you were in the most elderly age group. Now, I ask, except for an audience like we have here at the Blaze, where you guys let us do this work and publish it. People need to know, frankly, not every single major alternative and conservative media website allowed their staff to do the stuff that the Blaze allowed people like me and others to do the last few years. So even amongst our audience, how few people have ever heard that data that I just cited? Now ask yourself about the rest of the Gen Pop. About 80% of American adults took at least one dose of one of the COVID jabs or the non-mRNA Johnson & Johnson jab, which, by the way, was the only one that CDC cited as unsafe. Okay. So ask yourself, why not? And then ask yourself, if you knew that math, would you have taken the risk of the COVID jab if you knew that that's where the real odds were? And the answer for a lot of people probably is no, which is exactly why they didn't tell you.
Steve, let's go back out into a bigger picture of the Trump administration, right? Because we were promised shock and awe with the executive orders. There were things that were happening so fast we could barely keep up with them on this show every single day. Then we kind of got a little lull, and everybody got in place. Now, I remember being in Nashville with you at Jason Whitlock's studio for the COVID jab special, where RFK Jr. was there, and he was talking about basically the deep state was killing my relatives, right? Like that was one of the most impactful days.
Yes.
And I just couldn't believe that I was like a fly on the wall for that conversation. So now let's take that, what we know, right? He is absolutely going to be the guy that is not going to be scared about what is happening behind the scenes, right? Any of the political chess moves. RFK Jr. is going to be a guy who sees past that and says, this is my time. What is that going to mean politically for this administration as he is the one who is taking that first leap out and trying to say, you know what? I'm going to make changes right now. You all can follow.
Well, I think on one hand, we sat here after the election and I said that it potentially RFK Jr. has the chance to be the most consequential cabinet appointment in America since Kissinger. Kissinger was really the last time there was a cabinet appointment that became a household name. That his name, ID, and brand was on par with what people thought of even when it came to the president of the United States. And that it could potentially be amongst the most impactful cabinet appointments we've ever seen if they're going to really let him go. And I think for the most part, what you have seen is they have really let him go. I think a big test, Jill, is going to be in September. Both Trump and RFK Jr. have been teasing this study they've been conducting on what is the origin of this explosion in autism rates in America in the last 30 plus years. And for people that don't, you see, I'm kind of actually new to this stuff. When I first got into this business, I'm like, listen, man, I'm trying to uncover 47 different Rubik's Cubes. I don't have time for the Big Pharma stuff. And isn't that for a bunch of granola crunchers? Okay. And COVID dragged me into this now. And now I'm like, it's true, all of it. Okay. And so for people that have been long in this racket of pushing back on the racket, the connection between whatever they're doing with these vaccines and autism is kind of the genesis of this. It's the origin point for a lot of alternative health pushback. And so I think that study that comes out in September and what it says, what it doesn't say, will ultimately give you a huge notion of just how far the Trump administration is willing to push this when it comes to revolutionizing our health. And listen, I'll just say this anecdotally. I'm on a text chain, like a lot of us are. We've got private text chains, people we work with, people we know. I've got one of the ones I'm on, poker buddies back home. And everybody's talking about, my wife drank a gallon of milk every week. Now she's lactose intolerant. How'd that happen? She drank a gallon of milk every week for 30 years. Now she can't drink a single drink. We talk all the time. Matt, you and I, when we were in school, did you know anybody with a peanut allergy, Matt? No. Matt, we thought peanut butter was a food group. We literally just we ate a spoonful of it with every meal. Okay. And now, I can't eat bread. Bread, going back to Bible times, is maybe the most consumed food in human history. And now we can't eat it. Okay. Why? Why have these things happened? Because here's the thing, life expectancy has greatly expanded too. All right. This generation's probably going to live longer collectively than any human generation has since the antediluvian era, like before Noah's flood. All right, so explain to me then why we have the highest life expectancy we've had in thousands of years, but everyday products we used to consume are now and had for thousands of years when we weren't living as long and conditions were not as sanitary are now so suddenly dangerous to us. Those are things that need to be discovered and found out.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy how everyone seems to know instinctively, right, that there's something wrong. Mm-hmm. Everyone knows that, but what exactly it is you can't get at, and getting rid of these obstacles will help us find it. But I also want to talk about, what's still wrong with the federal apparatus when it comes to these issues, because, it's not just this one commission. There's a lot of things that probably need to change. I'm curious, where else do you think RFK should be operating? What else should he be working towards or doing?
I think the number one thing that needs to happen after he finishes this report in September, I think it's clear that he is going to expend a lot of his political capital on that report. Mm-hmm. Because again, that is the genesis account of the alternative health movement in America, is that, a perceived correlation. Mm. And I think after that is done and the smoke clears, the number one thing that has to happen, we're one of the last free countries on earth that still has as much pharma advertising as we do. And on one hand, we have to pick one. Okay, so if we're going to say we want innovation, and so we have to protect these innovators from tort and getting bogged down in lawsuits, fine. But we can't do both at the same time. We can't also have government being their singular promoters, and every major corporate media outlet in the country being completely sold out to them for ad revenue at the same time. It's got to be one or the other. All right, so one or the other has to be taken away. All right, this is the stuff of Standard Oil and antitrust lawsuits, that they have protection on one end and they have almost unlimited promotion on the other. I would go after the big pharma advertising and take it off of the air. And I would make them just compete solely in the arena of ideas, no longer be able to have these 60-second ads where 40 seconds are the disclaimer, faster than the FedEx commercial guys when we were kids. All right, I would get those ads off of the air. Yes. Remove the incentive of so many media that are essentially running cover for them, ripping and reading their press releases unskeptically as if they're actual news. All right, so just take that mother's milk away, and one of them has to be removed. I'd remove them both, but at least one of them has to go. We cannot, on one end, protect them from any form of liability for their actions, and then just give them an unlimited pot of promotion at the exact same time.
Go back and just take me back to the sports Steve Deace when you were back in those days, and go back and tell that Steve that was going to be just just jumping over into the political world and tell him that RFK Jr.
I know.
is going to be the guy
I know.
in the Donald Trump administration.
I know. It's crazy. I know.
And that's where this is all going to lead. And you're going to be like, yes, I can't wait for that day.
I know. You know, and I was reared in the William F. Buckley, Russell Kirk conservative movement, man. I mean, I'm a Rush. Well, you're more of a Rush baby. You're younger than me, but I grew up listening to all that stuff. I know all the Milton Friedman talking points. I know it all, and I think ultimately, I think I would have not been able to see things as they actually are on some of these fronts, if not for a biblical worldview. I think I would have been just sold out to my philosophical biases. And I think you see a lot of people are, and that's a lot of times, Joe, why they're clowning themselves all the time.
Yeah, Rush Babies Unite. Steve, thanks so much for coming in.
You bet. Good to see you.